Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is Daily Drop number 210. On tonight's program, we're going to talk about Ghislaine Maxwell and her ridiculous request to get the civil suit between her and Annie Farmer moved from New York to New Mexico. Now, everybody who listens to this podcast, even with just a little bit of regularity, understands that I have zero faith in the Southern District of New York at this point. Well, I have even less faith in New Mexico doing the right thing. When I was there, just in February, down at Zorro Ranch, the stuff that I heard from the sources that I was talking to down there, the ex-law enforcement source especially, it blew my mind with how ridiculous things were down there and how corrupt things were. And you know all of the players down there. We know the King family, who Epstein purchased the ranch from, the land for the ranch. We know that they're political royalty in New Mexico. We know about Bill Richardson. We know that he spread money around all over the place when it comes to local politics. But we also know that he chose New Mexico for other reasons, such as their lax laws when it comes to crimes such as these, such as the statute of limitations on laws such as these. So again, you'll have to always remember when we're talking about Jeffrey Epstein, we're talking about Ghislaine Maxwell, everything is done as part of a plan. None of this stuff was done willy-nilly. None of this stuff was done spur of the moment. That's not how people like this operate. People who are successful as assets, people who are successful as intelligence sources conduct themselves a certain way. And these weren't just your run-of-the-mill assets. These weren't assets that were turned on a battlefield, or these weren't assets that were being blackmailed. These were assets that were part of the machine. These were agents. And when you have people like this, people who understand spycraft and people who understand how to make moves under the radar and how to manipulate the system so that it conforms to their ideals, well, you have some dangerous people, folks. And that's what we were dealing with Jeffrey Epstein, and we're still dealing with Ghislaine Maxwell. There's a reason the trust, the 1953 trust of Jeffrey Epstein, was done in the Virgin Islands, and there's a reason that Zorro Ranch was done and located in New Mexico. And I should say, there's more than one reason, honestly, with New Mexico, in my opinion. And we've went over a lot of that stuff here. I've talked about New Mexico a whole lot here on this podcast, especially considering I had the trip down there. But I told you all then, and I stand by it now. There is a story still to be told out of New Mexico, and we have only scratched the surface down there. Let's remember, Zorro Ranch still has not been raided. Now, I've said on the podcast here several times that I did not believe that Ghislaine Maxwell is in America. I thought that would be almost impossible at this point, considering the private investigators that are looking for her, etc., etc. I figured that she would be hiding somewhere else. But in this article tonight, they bring up the question, is Ghislaine Maxwell hiding out at Zorro Ranch? And I've had some people email me and ask me what my opinion was of that. And to be honest with you, my gut says no, but these people love to hide in plain sight, right? They've been brazen with their operations and their activity from the very beginning, throwing it in civilizations, and I should say society's face, because these people don't care. They believe that with the power of their friends in the media and the enormous wealth that they have, that they'll be able to control the narrative and turn it whichever way that they deem fit. Now, that's over. They can't do that anymore because information is coming fast and furious from several locations. But we have to remember the people we're dealing with here, folks. We have to remember just how devious they are. And we have to remember the company that they kept. I mean, these people were hanging out with guys like Ehud Barak. And we know who he was. We know what his background is. And we know that he's a serious player when it comes to Israeli intelligence and military. And we also know that Jeffrey Epstein was locked in with the intelligence agency here in America, considering what Acosta said on record to the Trump transition team. Now, you add all of that up and you understand that these aren't your run-of-the-mill child traffickers, coyotes, or people that, came up with some harebrained idea that they're going to start a brothel. This is way more elaborate than all of that. This is way, way, way more elaborate than all of that. This is not just a trafficking ring. It is that, obviously, but there was a lot of other layers here. There were a lot of financial crimes going on. And like I've said for a long time now, in my humble opinion, a ton of espionage and a ton of scientific secrets being passed off to Lord knows who. I don't have direct evidence saying where this stuff ended up, so I'll never come on here and state for a fact, oh, it ended up in this person's hands. But I will tell you this, it certainly ended up with people who should not have had it, in my opinion. There's no doubt that Epstein was passing on information from these scientific projects to whoever his handlers were. And we can go on for days and speculate about just exactly who those people were. But it is obvious to me that Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, and this whole entire operation was not a run-of-the-mill child trafficking organization or just trafficking organization. This was much, much, much more than that. It was way, way refined. It was almost like they had a blueprint to build a home and went in and followed that blueprint perfectly. And when you're dealing with the people that, these people were dealing with, talking about whoever their handlers were, you know that these are serious people, and these are people who always have some sort of a plan wrapped within a plan and contingency plans, etc., etc. That's the way they operate. So when everything's rolling smooth for them, when they have everything going correctly, when they have their ducks in a row, it is almost impossible to air them out because of the cover that is laid by their lapdogs in the legacy media and the fact that people are so gaslit that they still, to this day, believe the legacy media when they're running bullshit at them. And look, this isn't a Trump thing for me either when I say this, by the way, folks. So don't get it twisted. I am not a fan of Trump. And to be honest with you, I'm not a fan of any politician at this point in this country. But what the FBI and James Comey and the FISA abuses, all of that stuff, that all goes hand in hand with what we talk about here with the rampant corruption in our intelligence agencies. If they're brazen enough to try to pull that off, you know that they don't give a shit about trying to put you or I in jail, right? They don't give a damn about any of us. So my problem is with any sort of out of control intelligence agency, I'm going to speak up about it when I see them acting incorrectly. And there's plenty of ways to slam Trump, and there were plenty of correct routes to go. The financials from Deutsche Bank, etc., etc. There were plenty of correct routes that they could have went, and they could have looked to expose him for being involved in criminalistic activity. But instead, they chose to attempt to create this whole entire fiasco. And people bought it. And all of the people that bought it, they're so disappointed at this point about the outcome that they're not willing to believe that they were gaslit or that the FBI or the intelligence agencies are so devious that they would do this. Folks, they would. And I don't blame people for being gaslit because, as I've explained previously, I've been gaslit myself before during the Iraq War. I totally bought into all of that sorry-ass, weak-ass, false sense of patriotism that they were pushing on us. Not understanding that I was being gaslit and dog-walked the whole entire time. But after that happened, after I figured it all out and I grew up a little bit, I had some more life experience, I promised that I would never be gaslit again by anybody. So I see the same thing happening with people over Russia. There's a lot of people who bought into that at first, who are totally understanding now that a lot of it is contrived, made up BS. And it's bad news when the intelligence agencies are engaging in stuff like this, because it is unchecked power for intelligence agencies never ends up well for the citizens, ever. And for more on that, I would always suggest that people check out the work of Aaron Maté and Glenn Greenwald, because they're fantastic when it comes to this sort of thing. And they're certainly not conservatives, folks, or Republicans, and they do not like Trump. But when you're a journalist and you're somebody who calls things out because you see them as they are, then you have to be consistent about it. And there are certain people, certain investigative journalists that still do that kind of work, and it's a good thing. Because when you look at the whole entire picture of our intelligence services, and especially you look at the cover they gave for Jeffrey Epstein and his organization for so long, it is mind-numbing to think that these people have gotten away with this for as long as they have gotten away with it. Maybe if the FBI wasn't so busy trying to frame people and trying to play politics and get involved in nonsense that they really have no business even being involved in, they could have focused a little bit more on bringing these scumbags down. And that's another thing that bothers me. We've had all of these hearings in front of Congress for all of this stuff about Ukraine, et cetera, et cetera. Where's the hearings for these girls? And that's both sides of the aisle, right? And believe me when I tell you, folks, I have zero love for any politician at this point. None of them. I don't support any of them. I don't endorse any of them for office. And going forward, I highly doubt that I'll ever endorse another politician ever again as long as I live, because they have all been nothing but pathetic failures, in my opinion. So when we see what's going on with the FBI, and we see the way that the Congress and the Senate has conducted themselves with their petty tribalism for the past few years, when they could have been doing real work, they could have convened a hearing and brought in people and got them under oath in regards to this Jeffrey Epstein situation. That goes for federal agents and everybody else in between. But no, they were too busy screwing off, trying to consolidate their power some more. And if you want to be skeptical, if you want to be a cynic, well, a lot of it had to do with the fact that they didn't want to expose their friends. Both sides of the aisle. Because, again, I don't know how many times I have to say this, there are no good guys in this case, folks. There are no white knights that are running to anyone's rescue in this case when it comes to the government and the officials surrounding this case. The only people that I will throw that title on that have been involved in this case are people like Bradley Edwards, and obviously the survivors themselves are legendary. They have legendary bravery, in my opinion, to come forward in the climate that they came forward in before people were aware of what was going on, myself included. I've been awake at the switch for a long time. I had no idea this sort of thing was occurring. My focuses were elsewhere. Basically, mainly government corruption. And when you find out what's really going on, what's truly happening behind the curtain, the anger and the disappointment you feel for your own government and for the institutions that you were told were, so honorable and so great, and, the gaslighting of the American public and the programming of the American public is it's beyond the pale at this point. And we need to have some accountability at places like the FBI. There needs to be accountability at places like the CIA. And there certainly needs to be accountability for anybody who was involved with Jeffrey Epstein or Ghislaine Maxwell. All right, so let's jump into this article. This article is from the Daily Mail, and the headline is Ghislaine Maxwell hiding out at Jeffrey Epstein's Zorro Ranch? New court documents reveal she's requesting Annie Farmer's civil case be moved to New Mexico, where the 16-year-old was sexually assaulted. This article was authored by Cheyenne Roundtree and Karen Ruiz. Jeffrey Epstein's alleged madam, co-conspirator, Ghislaine Maxwell, has asked a federal judge to move a civil case brought by one of the pedophile's victims to New Mexico, according to court papers obtained by DailyMail.com. Well, not just a victim of Jeffrey Epstein, a victim of Ghislaine Maxwell, too. Let's remember what she's saying here, and let's remember that Ghislaine Maxwell was a part of this, right? Let's not pussyfoot around it. What are they so worried about, Ghislaine Maxwell suing them? Then she has to end up at discovery phase, and we know she doesn't want to be at discovery phase just from her actions alone here. So people that, the publications really need to quit screwing around with their words and call Ghislaine Maxwell what she is. It's not like there's one person accusing her of this either. There are witness upon witness that has come forward talking about Ghislaine Maxwell and what she did while she was with Jeffrey Epstein as one of the heads of that criminal enterprise. Maxwell made the request in legal papers filed in the Southern District of New York last Thursday, raising new questions about Maxwell's whereabouts. And this is what I was talking about in the opening statement there. She could definitely be at Zorro Ranch, right? I can't say for a fact that she's not. I don't know. I only got to the gate. When I got to the gate, nobody came. I was there for 45 minutes. I was knocking where the cameras are, hanging out. Nobody showed up. I didn't see any movement, no activity on the property whatsoever. I didn't see any cars driving around. And from where you're at the front gate, you get a good look at those buildings, right? Those other structures for like farmhands and I guess guest houses, etc., etc. So I was there for 45 minutes and I did not see one single person. Now, I didn't have a view of the main mansion. And there's a lot of talk about the tunnel system below there. So could Ghislaine Maxwell be at Zorro Ranch? It is quite possible. Look, I'm not going to say no. I don't know one way or the other for sure, but if I was going to hide, that would certainly be a place that I would think about hiding. 100%, especially considering the political protection that was afforded to Jeffrey Epstein there for so long. It is the type of political protection that these people love to have in their back pocket as an ace up the sleeve. Because I think Ghislaine understands that the walls are closing in. And even in a place as corrupt as New York, there is more justice to be found than there is in New Mexico, in my opinion. Because we know that Zorro Ranch has still not been raided even. So is she there? I don't know. Is it possible? For sure. Do I think it's more possible her being there than some chateau in France? For sure. When I started to think about it, it seemed like it would be too obvious at first. But when I start to think about it, it's quite possible that she is there. And I don't have any evidence that points me that direction, but it is certainly a possibility that she is at Zorro Ranch, considering that property. The more I think about it, and the more I think about how big the place is and how easy it would be to hide away from prying eyes, it is quite possible, folks, quite possible. Annie Farmer, who claims Maxwell and Epstein sexually assaulted her age 16 at the disgraced financier pedophiles, New Mexico Ranch, is seeking damages from Maxwell and Epstein's $635 million estate. Yeah, damages for sure. Back up the Brinks truck. All right, fill it up with money, back it up, and go and dump it on Annie's front lawn. That's what she deserves from these monsters. What happened to Annie is absolutely abhorrent. What these two animals did, these two monsters did to this young girl, 16 years old, folks, can you imagine? Think back to when you were 16. And these two monsters assault her the way they did, and to think that Ghislaine Maxwell would try and get this case moved to New Mexico. I said just recently, I was wondering why the New Mexico district attorney didn't have a case opened in New Mexico. He's been punting everything to New York. And now Ghislaine Maxwell and her legal team are going to try and muddy the waters some more and start the whole process over by getting it kicked down to court in New Mexico. I really hope the judge sees this for what it is. I really, really, really hope the judge sees this for what it is. Because guess what? Annie Farmer, all of these ladies, all of these girls who were abused and assaulted by Jeffrey Epstein should have a Brinks truck back up to their front lawn and dump bags of money onto their front lawn. Because even with all that money, even with Epstein's whole entire fortune going to them, it still is not going to make up for what happened to them. It still doesn't fill in those cracks of their life from what they suffered and how they suffered throughout their youth their teens, their best years stolen from them because these monsters were allowed to operate right under the nose of the pathetic, weak-ass intelligence services of the United States of America. But Maxwell argues that Farmer, who is now 40, has brought up her complaint years too late and it should be thrown out. No. The only thing that should be thrown out is your request and your freedom, Ghislaine. And the only requests you should be making are from a jail cell wearing a jumper. And if me, I'd drop your ass off at Guantanamo. Because you're as foul as one of these terrorists. You're a disgusting, despicable excuse for a human being, in my opinion. To bolster her argument, Maxwell points out that the alleged assault is said to have occurred in New Mexico, so if the case were to proceed, it should be transferred there. More games, more gamesmanship. These people love to play games like this. They love to make moves like this. They love to muddy the waters. They love to obfuscate. They love to drag their feet. And our disgusting-ass justice system is set up perfectly for them. So they can maneuver their way through loopholes and litigate cases until normal people can't pay a single dollar more. But guess what? They ran into their match this time because Annie's lawyers and the lawyers for the survivors aren't going to back down. They're not going to be bullied, and they're not going to be intimidated by this sort of litigation. They're going to stand their ground, and they're going to fight back. And guess what? When all is said and done, folks, they're going to win. When it comes to these damages, the Epstein estate is going to be wiped out, clean wiped out by the damages they have to pay out. That is my prediction. And I don't make many of those, by the way. The filing comes as Maxwell has largely been a ghost since Epstein's arrest last summer, as questions about where she is continue to follow the British socialite, co-conspirator, child abuser, etc., etc. Not socialite, all right? She's not a socialite anymore. She lost that title if she ever had it. Maxwell was seen in public just once since Epstein was arrested last summer after DailyMail.com exclusively tracked her down to the small coastal town of Manchester by the Sea in Massachusetts. And I tried to follow that a little bit further. I have a couple of friends in Massachusetts, but unfortunately they were never able to provide me with any sort of concrete leads about if she was there or not. I know that the Daily Mail reported that she was, but again, I'm very skeptical about anything when it comes to Ghislaine Maxwell and anything short of a documented image at this point, and I'm going to remain skeptical because when you hold the keys to the bodies, to where the bodies are buried, and you know where all the skeletons are buried, well, you're a very dangerous person for these people. And there is a lot of gamesmanship going on. So I'm very skeptical with anything that has to do with Ghislaine Maxwell. She had been staying at the home of her boyfriend. Her sister, who lives in Texas, was later seen in the area packing up bags. So was she there, or was it a game they were playing? A throw you off the scent kind of game? I don't know, one way or the other. She might have been there, right? She might have been there. But me, I'm going to remain skeptical when we're dealing with this disgusting, vile woman. But an image was released of Maxwell in California eating at an In-N-Out location shortly after DailyMail.com revealed that she had been staying in Massachusetts. There you go. See what I mean? Always games. There's always a plan wrapped within a plot with these people. And if you're not reading between the lines, if you're not looking 4 moves ahead while you're playing chess against them, you will be obliterated. Because while you're playing checkers, these people are playing 4D chess. Ever since Maxwell's whereabouts have been largely unknown, but she had spent long periods of time at Epstein's Zorro Ranch during their years together. Farmer suit claims that in the spring of 1996, Maxwell touched Farmer's intimate parts against her will during a massage at Epstein's ranch and exposed her breasts to Farmer. Remember, Annie was 16 years old when this happened. A 16-year-old girl that was at this ranch. And these people abused her the way they did. They assaulted her the way they did. And Ghislaine Maxwell has the audacity to request anything from the court system? She has the audacity to try and get this case kicked to New Mexico? Furthermore, we could alleviate all of that real quick, Mr. Berman, by slapping her with federal RICO charges. Then it falls under the federal umbrella, where the charges are much more severe. Why that has not occurred yet, folks, I do not have the answer for you. But I will tell you this. If they drop a RICO charge on her, this will end all of the BS that we're seeing from Ghislaine Maxwell and her defense team. In court papers from last week, Maxwell's lawyer states that Farmer's complaint is years too late, lacks the required specificity, and is filed in the wrong court. Again, not that it didn't happen. It's never that it didn't happen, because Ghislaine Maxwell knows damn sure that this happened. She knows that this happened, and she knows that Annie is telling the truth. And she knows that Annie and Maria have both been telling the truth since the very beginning. The filing adds, it describes events that allegedly occurred nearly 3 decades ago, and it details alleged conduct by Mr. Epstein while referring to Miss Maxwell as an afterthought. When the complaint does allege conduct by Miss Maxwell, it alleges conduct that occurred in New Mexico, not New York. This court, therefore, should dismiss the complaint or transfer the case against Miss Maxwell to the District of New Mexico. And both of those would be a huge win for Ghislaine Maxwell. A huge win for Ghislaine Maxwell, considering the lax laws in New Mexico and considering that the process would have to start all over once again. Why in the world would any judge agree to this? Why in the world would her defense team even try this move? There is zero doubt in my mind that the judge is going to laugh at this request. Considering the judge has had to chase her down so many times in this case, considering she had to get served via email, I highly doubt that the judge is going to be wanting to deal with any of Ghislaine Maxwell's BS. Highly doubt it. Maxwell's lawyer states that Farmer's 1996 claims expired sometime in 1999 because New Mexico has a 3-year statute of limitations for personal injury actions and minors who have 1 year from reaching the age of majority to begin such an action. Again, he didn't choose New Mexico just because. Very carefully chose New Mexico because of their laws when it comes to things like this, because of their law when it comes to the age of consent. They chose New Mexico for a reason, and the story in New Mexico has yet to be told. The full story has yet to be told, folks, and that's something I'm going to keep working towards. I want to get to the bottom of what went down in New Mexico. I really would love to know the whole story. And if there are other sources out there, people that have knowledge of what cracked off in New Mexico, feel free to reach out to me. I'm only a few hour flight away. I can always fly back down and sit down and talk with you folks. So believe me, I am open to that. If security, people are worried about emails, etc., no problem. I could fly down and we could speak face to face like I did the last time with some of my sources, because it's that serious what happened down in New Mexico. It warrants me disrupting my life and flying down there again if that's the case, because there is a lot to be told at Zorro Ranch and in New Mexico, and I feel like it's crucial for the rest of the case and for justice to truly be served that the story from New Mexico comes to light. 5 days after requesting to move the case to New Mexico, Maxwell's attorney, Laura Menninger, asked to delay Farmer's case, saying it could interfere with the ongoing criminal case against the British socialite, aka co-conspirator. The 58-year-old is also under investigation by federal prosecutors in New York after she was accused of recruiting and grooming underage girls for Epstein. In a letter sent to a federal judge, Menninger argued Maxwell's deposition in Farmer's suit could implicate her in the ongoing criminal case. So she basically confirms that she's under investigation as a co-conspirator. That's a good thing. So what I will say about that is there's a little ray of sunshine, right? But again, what's Berman waiting for? The evidence is all there. Swoop her up, make her life difficult, make it hard on her to defend herself, flip it around. because the federal government's the best at that. They will litigate you into the poverty house. You will be so poor that you'll be begging for money on the streets when you're done litigating against the federal government. The U.S. Attorney's Office in the Southern District of New York has publicly and repeatedly announced its ongoing criminal investigation into alleged Epstein co-conspirators on the same topic as Farmer alleges in this case, Menninger said. Denial of a stay, particularly a stay of Miss Maxwell's deposition, pending outcome of the criminal investigation, could impair her Fifth Amendment privilege against self-incrimination, extend criminal discovery, expose the defense's theory to the prosecution in advance of trial, or otherwise prejudice the criminal case. Wah! Nobody cares. Nobody cares, and guess what? That's all legalese. None of that's even true in my opinion. Again, I'm not a lawyer, but I'm sure that Annie's lawyers are going to dismantle that whole entire line of thinking, 1, 2, 3, easy peasy style, because it just seems absurd on its face. Farmer's lawyer, David Boies, responded to the request on Monday, calling it meritless and another attempt to unjustifiably delay this litigation. He also argued Maxwell has not provided enough information on the criminal probe or her relation to it to ask for a delay in her deposition. Maxwell, therefore, cannot use the existence of a criminal investigation to dodge her discovery obligations in this matter, particularly while at the same time refusing to provide any details or reasons as to why the investigation is a reason to stay the action, he wrote. So Boies is saying the same thing. David Boies is saying this is just more of an attempt for her to drag her feet, for her to delay things in this case, and for her to try and buy more time. For whatever reason, I don't know. But again, I don't think she does anything without having a plan. So she's delaying for a reason, folks. What that reason is, I don't know. The lawsuit is just one of several civil cases that has been launched by Epstein survivors following his death last year. Maxwell, meanwhile, has managed to lay low and is believed to be in hiding as the FBI's net closes around Epstein's circle. Okay, that's all fine and well, but is it really happening? We don't have any arrests. We haven't seen any warrants issued. All we have are 2 people facing felonies, and those are the people that were in charge of guarding Epstein on the night he allegedly killed himself. So I want to believe that the net's closing in, and I want to believe that the SDNY is starting to put things into motion, but until I see that with my own eyes and evidence of it, I will remain skeptical. In March, she sued Epstein's estate, claiming she knew nothing about his sex crimes. Maxwell is seeking compensation for legal fees and security costs incurred by her association with Epstein, who committed suicide in prison last year, allegedly. And what she's really trying to do is, in my opinion, she fired that shot over the bow and she's letting Khan and Indike know the story. She's letting them know the deal. That if she goes down, the whole entire operation's going down in flames with her. Because if you think that Ghislaine Maxwell has any sort of loyalty to Darren Khan and Indike, there is, Richard Khan and Darren Indike, if you think she has any loyalty to these people, you are sadly mistaken. She has no loyalty to anybody. She might have had some loyalty to Jeffrey Epstein, but she does not have any loyalty to anyone left in this organization. Everybody below her was a pawn, and people like Indike and Khan, well, they were just necessary for operations to continue. She doesn't care about them. She doesn't care about Vickers. The only person that she might care about as far as friendship goes is Andrew, and I don't believe that for a minute either. I don't think that people like Ghislaine Maxwell are capable of having any sort of real friendships. I think sociopaths like that are incapable of any sort of real connection with other people that could be called friendship. This case cannot be allowed to be kicked to New Mexico. The judge must put their foot down. The judge must tell Maxwell to pound sand, and this case must continue to go on, and we must go to discovery phase, and all of the cards at that point will be laid on the table, and Ghislaine Maxwell will be proven once and for all, in my opinion, to be the vile, disgusting human being we all know that she is. If you'd like to contact me, you could do that at Bobbycapucci at protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI at protonmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter at BOBBY_CAPUCCI. You can also find the information for my Patreon within the description box. All right, everybody, until tomorrow, I hope you all have an amazing night.